Europe in 1815 was a continent holding its breath. Napoleon Bonaparte, the emperor who had shaken the foundations of Europe, had returned from exile. He had landed on the shores of France, a conquering hero to many, and raised his banners once more. The monarchs of Europe, who had only recently put the continent back together after years of Napoleonic warfare, were thrown into turmoil. Their fragile peace was shattered, and war was inevitable. Napoleon's return ignited old loyalties and sparked fresh fears. France, weary of war but eager for glory, rallied to its emperor. Across the continent, armies mobilized. Britain, Prussia, Austria, Russia, and a host of smaller states formed a coalition dedicated to crushing Napoleon's resurgent empire before it could truly rise again. The fate of Europe hung in the balance, and the stage was set for a decisive confrontation. The fate of Europe, it seemed, would be decided in a small valley in what is now Belgium. A crossroads of fields and farms, the village of Waterloo would become synonymous with one of the most pivotal battles in history. Here, the armies of France, led by Napoleon himself, would clash with the Allied forces under the command of the Duke of Wellington, a British general of renowned skill and tenacity. The year 1815 held the promise of a long, hot summer, but for the soldiers massing near Waterloo, the heat of battle would soon overshadow the sun. The fate of nations rested on the shoulders of these men, and on the outcome of the struggle about to unfold. The world watched and waited, holding its breath as the shadow of the emperor fell once more across Europe. On the eve of battle, two formidable armies faced each other across the fields of Waterloo. Napoleon's Armée du Nord, hardened by years of warfare and fiercely loyal to their emperor, numbered around 72,000 men. They were a force to be reckoned with, veterans of countless campaigns who had marched from the pyramids of Egypt to the frozen plains of Russia. Opposing them stood the Allied army, a diverse force of British, Dutch, Belgian and German troops, numbering some 68,000 men. At their head was Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, a master tactician known for his coolness under fire and his ability to inspire his men. Wellington had chosen his battlefield carefully, a low ridge offering a strong defensive position. The French army was renowned for its aggressive spirit and the tactical genius of its commander. Napoleon's troops were masters of the attack column, a dense formation of infantry designed to smash through enemy lines with overwhelming force. They were supported by a powerful artillery arm and a formidable cavalry, the feared cuirassiers clad in gleaming breastplates and eager to break the enemy's resolve. The Allied army, while lacking the homogeneity of the French, was no less determined. Wellington's British troops were veterans of the Peninsular War, hardened by years of fighting against Napoleon's armies in Spain and Portugal. They were renowned for their discipline and their steadfastness in defense, particularly the red-coated infantry squares that had broken many a French charge. The stage was set for a titanic struggle. Two armies, led by two of the greatest military minds of the age, prepared to clash in a battle that would decide the fate of Europe. The tension on the battlefield was palpable, a heavy silence, broken only by the occasional drumbeat or the distant neigh of a horse. The world held its breath, waiting for the storm to break. The morning of June 18th, 1815, dawned wet and heavy. Rain had fallen throughout the night, turning the battlefield into a sea of mud. Napoleon, eager to seize the initiative, had delayed his attack until the ground dried sufficiently for his artillery to maneuver. He had also detached a portion of his army under Marshal Blücher to pursue the retreating Prussians, who had been defeated at Ligny 2 days prior. Wellington, aware of Napoleon's intentions, had deployed his forces along the ridge, anchoring his right flank on the chateau of Hougomont and his left on the village of Papelotte. He knew that holding the high ground would be crucial, forcing the French to attack uphill against prepared defences. The battle began around 11:30 a.m. with a French artillery bombardment, a thunderous barrage aimed at softening up the Allied lines. The French guns roared, sending iron and fire crashing into Wellington's positions. The Allied troops, sheltering behind whatever cover they could find, endured the onslaught with stoic determination. The first French infantry assault targeted Hougomont, a fortified farmhouse on the Allied right flank. Napoleon believed that capturing Hougomont would weaken Wellington's position and allow his troops to roll up the Allied line. However, the British defenders, led by the tenacious Guards, fought with extraordinary bravery, repelling wave after wave of French attackers. The fight for Hougoumont raged throughout the day, a brutal and bloody struggle for a few acres of ruined masonry. The sound of musketry and the clash of steel echoed across the battlefield as the two armies grappled in a deadly embrace. While the main French attack was yet to come, the battle for Hougoumont served as a grim prelude to the carnage that was to follow. Section 4. The Lion's Fury, Napoleon's attacks commence. With the early afternoon sun breaking through the clouds, Napoleon unleashed the main thrust of his attack. Division after division of French infantry surged forward, their bayonets gleaming under the pale sunlight, aiming to break the center of Wellington's line. The earth trembled under the weight of their advance, a deep-throated roar rising from thousands of throats as they charged towards the Allied positions. Wellington's men, formed in line and sheltered behind whatever cover the rolling terrain offered, met the French onslaught with disciplined volleys of musket fire. The air filled with the acrid smoke of gunpowder and the screams of the wounded. The French, despite suffering heavy casualties, continued to press their attacks with unwavering determination. One of the most dramatic moments of the battle occurred when Marshal, Napoleon's most trusted cavalry commander, led a massive charge against the Allied centre. Thousands of French cuirassiers clad in shining armour thundered across the battlefield in a terrifying spectacle of equestrian might. The Allied infantry, forming squares to protect themselves from the cavalry, braced for the impact. Horses and riders crashed against the solid walls of bayonets, their momentum broken by the unwavering discipline of the Allied troops. The French cavalry, though they fought bravely, were unable to break the British squares and suffered heavy losses. Despite the ferocity of the French attacks, Wellington's army held firm. The British infantry, renowned for their discipline and firepower, inflicted terrible casualties on the attacking French. However, the situation remained precarious for the Allies. The French were relentless and Wellington's forces were slowly being worn down. The outcome of the battle hung in the balance, each side fighting with the courage and desperation of men who knew that the fate of nations rested on their shoulders. Section 5. Holding the line, Wellington's defence. Wellington, a master of defensive warfare, directed his forces with calmness and precision. He understood the importance of maintaining morale and discipline amidst the chaos of battle. His presence on the battlefield, easily identifiable on his horse Copenhagen, provided a rallying point for his troops. The Allied troops, inspired by their commander's example, fought with extraordinary courage and tenacity. The British infantry, formed in their iconic red lines, withstood repeated French assaults with unwavering discipline. Their volleys of musket fire tore huge gaps in the advancing enemy ranks, while their artillery batteries rained down a deadly hail of grape shot and canister. However, the Allied army was not composed solely of British troops. Dutch, Belgian and German units also played vital roles in the defence of the ridge. While some of these units lacked the experience of their British counterparts, they fought with bravery and determination, holding their ground against the relentless French onslaught. Wellington's strategy relied on utilizing the natural features of the battlefield to his advantage. He deployed his troops behind ridges and in sunken roads, minimizing their exposure to French artillery fire. He also made effective use of his limited cavalry reserves, launching counterattacks to disrupt French formations and relieve pressure on his infantry. As the afternoon wore on, the situation for the Allies grew increasingly desperate. The French, despite suffering heavy losses, continued to attack with unrelenting fury. Wellington's troops, exhausted and running low on ammunition, fought on with grim determination. The Duke, though his face remained impassive, knew that his army could not hold out indefinitely. He needed a miracle, and it arrived in the form of Prussian reinforcements appearing on the horizon.